Welcome to another episode of the Saddle Up Show with Shaad and Destin. And Destin, we back, man. We back. I know we did episode last week, but that was kind of an interview we conducted with Blake Freeland. Shout out to Freeland from BYU, one of the newest coats, one of 12 newest coats that was selected on draft day. But like we start every episode, Destin, how are you doing this past week?
I'm doing good, man. For those of you that don't know, I work at a university. That university is officially on summer break, so just adjusting to those new hours, adjusting to those new a little bit more free time to kind of look up and get ready for next fall. So definitely less stress in my life right now.
Yeah, man, that's always fun. I never had the pleasure of working in the school system or for a university or anything like that. So I never got those elongated breaks. I always wondered what people do, when they have that kind of time off, like teachers and everything. But they deserve it because their job is a lot more stressful than mine is, dealing with kids, teens, and just in any capacity like that. Like I always felt for those people because they have a really difficult job to do. So, what are you planning to do with your new free time?
I mean, you always got to prepare for the fall. Preparing for the next semester that's going to be coming up. But in general, just gonna coast a little bit,
Mhm.
catch my breath a little bit. The end of semesters always get so crazy busy, so it's always nice to have this little bit of quiet time right before then.
Yeah, and that was the craziest thing about that. It would be dope if like a lot was going on with the Colts right now. So when you did get the downtime, you have a lot of stuff to write about. But guess what? By the time the Colts stuff start to crank back up, the school will be getting ready to crank back up as well. So that kind of sucks actually.
It's a
Um,
part of it. It's a part of it. But this is known for all those listening. This is what I like to call like the NFL Bermuda Triangle. Right after the draft, before teams get to training camp, we're just kind of in this little lull period where there's not going to be much actual news. So you're just going to get a bunch of outlets running as many narratives as they can. Luckily for the Colts right now, a lot of the ones going out of for them are positive. The one that I feel like has been running all week is that Anthony Richardson seems to be ahead of schedule before pads even go on. So that's where we're at right now. That Anthony Richardson is a Hall of Famer. Day one of rookie minicamp. So that's pretty exciting.
yeah, man. And for those of you that have been following me at Destin for a while and our show, we're going back to our roots this episode, man. Like we originated as a show that was for the people. Like we wanted to answer you guys' questions, whether you sent them in ahead of time on Twitter or you asked them. We have the super chat feature if you want to skip the line and just get your question asked immediately. We have that. And we also just drop questions in the chats, and the good ones we'll pick and we'll put them up on the screen and we'll answer them, man. Like we always wanted to interact with the fans. Like that was the whole purpose of this show in the very beginning. And just kind of with all the newsy and things that we've been reporting on, we kind of got away from it a little bit. Still found time to answer things during episodes, but it hasn't been a focal point specifically. So we kind of want to get back to that. Me and Dustin talked about it earlier, and we decided to make a conscious effort to get back to those things. And you guys asked some questions earlier on Twitter, and we know you guys have dropped questions in the chat. You guys always do it, Professor Destin. That's hilarious. So we're gonna get back to that this episode, man, and we're gonna start out with a pretty good one. Unless they had some newsy thing that you wanted to touch on. I know the schedules thing kind of been ran into the ground last week, so it wasn't a priority for me to touch on it. But I don't know if you had anything you wanted to say before we start.
Yeah, no, nothing too newsy.
Mm-hmm.
I would just say shout out to the Horseshoe Huddle and Locked On team there for all the work that's been going through. Make sure you guys are looking at all those videos for any breaking news type stuff as they come through. But yeah, pumped to get back into questions, and of course, pumped to get back into rating Twitter ads. I mean, that's where our true love is, guys. Football's a hobby. Rating Twitter ads are where me and Shad's that's where our hearts lie.
Of course, man. So without further ado, let's get started. Our man Nug NUG at NUG 5356. I feel like we've rated his ad name
So
before.
so I believe he's changed his at since. So this because this used to be Ghost of Nug. I don't know if you remember that at that
Yeah,
would ask us
uh-huh.
questions. So I know this is the same account. So shout out him. So I think we can re-rate it. Just because there's different things going on. For me, Ghost of Nug was better than Nug 5356. So I feel like we went backwards here.
Hmm.
No offense to you, but for those of you who don't remember, 6.5 is my standard. If you're on the average line, that's where I'm going to go usually. The numbers there and the fact that I know in my head that you backtracked in the world of ats, I'm going to have to go into the world of like a 5 here.
Yeah, I'm gonna go same. You know, I used to like Ghost of Nug actually. Ghost of Nug is pretty dope. I believe I gave that a 6.5 when you had it. But now I'm gonna go ahead and move it to five. Five seems pretty fair. That's my man though, so I'm kind of biased because
Yeah,
that's my guy.
we
Yeah,
appreciate the support.
yeah.
Just improve the at game once again.
Take the numbers. Take the numbers, Nug. Can you do an episode just you two recapping the draft? Which is weird because the draft fell kind of like right when I was moving, so me and Destin never really got to just talk back and forth and talk through all the draft picks. I'm sure we given our thoughts on several other outlets, or whether it's Twitter or anywhere else, so you guys know how we feel. But we just never had an episode solely devoted to it. But I'm sure we have ample amount of time for you guys to get how we feel over the summer about each pick in its entirety. But we want to focus on the next three parts of the questions pretty much. It's things y'all were hearing up to and during the draft, interesting nuggets from it, and your breakdown of it.
Yeah, so I guess we can start at the things we were hearing up to it.
Hmm.
This is kind of a conversation that me and Shad had off air a little bit going into the draft. I was told that morning that Anthony Richardson was the guy that my source with the team believed the team was going to head towards. He believed that would have been the pick no matter who the quarterback what were that was available. So I know there was some stress with a lot of Colts fans on draft day. I saw the tweets, I saw all of the nervous gifs being put out there. But from what I heard, I think inside it really wasn't ever a tough conversation for them. As long as he was there, I think this is the guy that they have targeted, and that's kind of what Chris Ballard has said after the part. But it's always hard to believe those statements because the only team you're ever gonna know for a fact they drafted their top guy is the team that drafted at number one. But from what I was told before the draft even started, this was the guy that the Colts had honed in on, and this is the guy that they wanted to get.
Yeah, I want to go as far as to say I never heard Will Levis' name come from anyone inside of the Colts building throughout the entire draft process. I shared it with Destin. I even ran it by. I was picking his brain to see if he had ever heard Will Levis' name. He couldn't confirm it. Anybody I've talked to, as far as media goes, asking them had they heard anybody say Will Levis' name throughout the draft process. It was no. So when the national reports came out saying Will Levis, I was always befuddled by it. And we've even talked about it behind the scenes, like where are they getting this from? Because people that we were talking to, no one was saying Will Levis' name. Now I'm sure that Will Levis, that I know the Colts liked Will Levis enough to draft him at 4. Had all of their other options been gone, but it was no point in the draft process did I think that all three quarterbacks would be gone and the Colts would be stuck with Will Levis. Like I never seen that as a viable option because I just always felt like Will Anderson was gonna go somewhere, either 2 or 3, to either Arizona at the time or the Texans. It ended up being the Texans who picked that 2 and 3, which was unlikely, but that's one thing I'll say about leading up to the draft. Like I know it was a lot of talk about Levis and what the Colts' plans were, how much they liked them throughout the process and everything like that. But I never heard anyone say that they'll take Levis over Richardson throughout the draft process. And it was a struggle to find anyone that I personally talked to that had heard the same thing. But national guys just seemed like the narrative for them.
Yeah, whenever those kind of things get spun like that week of, like it's just hard to like ever put a lot of weight into it. I
Yeah,
had said going up to the process, I was going to stick with what I had heard since February consistently. Things you learn that week, usually there's a reason you're learning it. Even when I got the information the morning of about Richardson, the only reason I really felt confident in it was one, the source that it being was my top Colts source that told me this. And secondly, it lined up with what I had already heard prior. But for the
yeah,
most part, when new information comes on the scene that late into the process, to me, there's a reason it's out there.
yeah, and man, people lie so much. Like even people from these organizations lie. Like somebody that I know from Washington football team, well, or Washington Commanders. I'm sorry. They purposely lied to me, about a guy that they like. Luckily, I had no interest in putting it out to the public because I don't I don't cover Washington or anything like that. But they purposely lied to me about a guy, hoping I would go float it, to the public. And he called me after the draft and it was like, oh yeah, I'm sorry I had to do that, but such and such, and it's all fun and games. We laugh about it after the fact, but you just got to really be careful with who you trust, man. And that's why a lot of the stuff we were just discussing it behind the scenes because if we take everything we've heard and went to Twitter with it, you guys would be down our neck about, oh, you were wrong about this, you were wrong about that. Well, really, we're not wrong. We're just reporting what was told to us, and those teams just happen to be lying to us. So that's why it's kind of a risky game to play. Me and Destin kind of scaled back actually with a lot of the stuff that we heard, and in comparison to last season, where we was reporting a lot of stuff, like a lot of things we were ahead of, and we had to kind of dial it back because just so many of these people in these organizations just tell stories, man. And you guys don't see that side of it. You guys just see us. We may say something cryptically, but it's for a reason. It's because we're not sure if they're telling the truth, or two, we're probably not allowed to say it directly. Or it could be for multiple reasons, man. It's a crazy game, and if you were behind the scenes to hear all the stuff we hear, you guys would be shocked.
Yeah, and of course, Shaad just wants clicks. That's the reason he does most of the cryptic stuff he does.
That probably is the reason too.
But so moving away from what we heard prior to the draft, some interesting nuggets during. I mean, we've heard a lot of things be said since. I mean, I think one of the most interesting things I have heard personally since the draft ended is on corner Darius Rush out of South Carolina. I was told pretty directly that he was a corner that they viewed that if they did not go corner in the second round, where they did end up landing Julius Brents, local kid there out of Kansas State, graduate from Indy in Warren Central. But they end up getting Julius Brents in the second. I was told directly that Darius Rush was a guy they were looking at in the third if they didn't go corner. So they go corner in the second. So he's there in the third. They pass on him. They end up getting Josh Downs, who they had a lot of interest in as well, obviously. The fourth round comes around. Darius Rush is still there. They almost pulled the trigger and took him in that round because they liked him so much, but because they already went corner, they went other positions of need in the fourth. And then when he was sitting there again in the fifth, it was just too good to be true for them, and they had to go that route. And then you look at the guy in Jalen Jones in the seventh. I was told that they liked him even in the fifth round. So like the team is very happy on how the corners fell in their lap in this draft. It was a position of need going in. Some would say it was the largest need after quarterback on this roster, and they feel very fortunate from what I've been told since in the amount of guys they've gotten. And I mean, it's not often that when you draft 12 guys, it's going to be hard for all 12 to make a roster, of course.
Yeah.
But I feel really confident saying I think these three corners are going to make the roster.
Yeah, as far as to kind of piggyback on what you were saying, I heard the Juju Brent thing was a lock. Like I heard they were really, really high on him, and had they not traded back in the second, they still would have took him in that spot. They was comfortable enough with him as a player to take him in that spot. Had they not even moved back, so to move back and still get him, they were ecstatic about that. I even mocked them uh, in the second or third round. I can't
Yeah.
remember in my mock draft.
Hey, he was
Uh,
a climber all off season.
Yeah, yeah. They like people started talking late first with him, and I wasn't that high on him as far as being late first, but I always thought he was probably the best fit from a physical standpoint in this defense and the way they like to play. And I knew they was going receiver at some point on day two. I mocked the receiver. It wasn't the receiver I mocked because he was obviously going in the first round. But I knew they would go receiver day two. I just didn't think there was no way in hell it would be Josh Downs in round three because I just never thought that that was even a possibility. This was another guy that people had talked themselves into being a late first round guy, especially with these receivers. He was wide receiver 5 on most people's board. And when we saw 4 wide receivers go in a row in the first round, a lot of people felt like Josh Downs was the next guy to come off the board. And when it didn't happen, it was a shock. Seeing him drop was probably one of the biggest shocks in the draft, along with Keely Ringo. That's another guy, that dropped entirely too far, in my opinion. I wasn't as high on him as Destin was, but I thought he was a very, very good player still, and I had no idea that he was going to drop like that. But those are two of the most interesting picks um, that I heard about. The Juju Brents thing was just it was front door. They was in love with him from a character standpoint and just a physical profile.
Yeah, sometimes the obvious choices are the right choices, and
Right.
so that came to fruition. But going down here from the next part, was there another part of this question, or are we going to go on to the next question overall?
We could move on. We could move
Yeah.
on.
So we
I don't
got
believe we had
Daryl Ingram
anything
is
interesting.
next. So we got Daryl Ingram next. Will the Colts sign a veteran right guard to push Fries and Emil Ekior Jr. For those of you that aren't aware, a undrafted free agent the Colts signed, a guy that I was told was pretty much priority number one once the draft ended, and getting him inked as an undrafted free agent, bringing him home another local product out of Indy coming in. But Daryl Ingram, we've definitely rated his app before at Ingram Daryl 31.
Yeah, the Colts. I know that they had a visit. They contacted Chris Hubbard. Former offensive lineman. I believe he spent time with Pittsburgh and the Cleveland Browns, if I'm not mistaken. He was contacted and they discussed the deal. But as far as offensive lineman, interior offensive lineman, I'm told that that's still a priority, a position they want to add at. They want to add competition, or whether they sign a starter altogether. That's something that they're still looking into and they're still evaluating it. I sound like Chris Hubbard. I say Chris Hubbard. They sound like Chris Ballard when I'm talking about. That's something they still evaluating, still they want to look at. And typically after OTAs, when they see what they have as a unit and guys are all together, then they could kind of assess what direction they want to make these late additions. Don't forget, Chris Ballard has a track record of waiting extremely late in the offseason to sign a guy that ended up being a very vital part of the offense. We've seen that time after time again, especially on the offensive line. He's known for adding a piece. We've seen it with Matt Pryor a couple of years ago. We've seen it with Eric Fisher a couple of years before that. And, he always adds these guys. So don't be shocked that, heading into OTAs, we don't have a clear cut, definitive right guard yet. You probably want to see these guys battle it out, assess the situation from there, and then, you know, decide on if he wants to make a call to one of these free agents that's still in the pool.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some quality starters out there that you can go get. Obviously, a Dalton Risner comes to mind, that a guy that can come in and start day one.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I do have this pipe dream that I want to mention.
Uh oh.
That
That's has been
let's
spending too much time thinking
let's
again. Go ahead.
say Blake Freeland comes in and he played most of the snaps at right tackle. If you guys listened to our episode last week, he kind of talked about that with us. That's where he had
Mm-hmm.
done most of his snaps in rookie minicamp. If he comes in and he's playing at a level enough where they feel comfortable playing him at right tackle and they feel like they like the upside there, what if we push Braden Smith into right guard, and you play Blake Freeland at right tackle, and then the offensive line then is Bernard Ryman, Quentin Nelson, Ryan Kelly, Braden Smith, Blake Freeland. and then you have Jake Witt as the guy that's developing as a swing tackle. I would still want to add veterans for depth purposes. I mean, you'd have Danny
Yeah.
Pinter as the priority center backup. Will Fries, I think
Mm-hmm.
Will Fries is solid as a guard rotational player, that sixth,
Mm-hmm.
seventh lineman personally. And then I would want to add a tackle, even if Jake Witt makes the
Yeah,
roster. I
Jake,
think
because Jake Witt can't be a swing tackle next year. Like he
definitely. I mean, Chris Ballard called him a swing because he's very raw. I mean, very new to football. Like started playing football his. I mean, what would be his junior year? The COVID year essentially messes things up. But his junior year of college, this guy starts playing football. like
That's crazy.
so this is a thing to look into that we aren't really sure of how that's gonna fall out. But they like the upside with the kid, so I wouldn't be shocked if he makes the roster. But I think they like what they have in Amelia Ekiyor Jr. So that's another guy that as a depth guard piece that they could roll with, and maybe he comes in and just knocks the brain off people, and that's who they want to roll with a guard. To me,
Mm-hmm.
my main priority is putting the best five on the field, whatever that
Yeah.
is, and whatever you have to do to move guys around on the line to make it make sense. That's what I think you do. And right now, I think the way I envision it would be Braden Smith going to guard, and you throw Freeland out at tackle.
Hey, that's not a bad idea, man. That's not a bad idea. Uh, I want to shout out Patrick Rye. Our guy sent us a $5 super chat saying, "Chances we have a new Legion of Boom in Indy by 2025 with this young secondary under Bradley's direction." I don't know if they'll be quite as good as the Legion of Boom because that's a legendary defense. Like I believe it's about a good three of those guys will be Hall of Famers for sure. I think Wagner and Richard Sherman is locks. And there's a couple other guys that'll get
If if
consideration
if
for sure.
Chancellor wouldn't have got injured as much as he did,
Yeah.
he had a chance.
Or if Earl Thomas didn't go off the deep end,
Yeah, we
like
don't need to talk about Earl. Just Google Earl Thomas, guys.
yeah, he went completely off the deep end. So but they had very good players. Michael Bennett was another one. KJ Wright was great. They had a bunch of good players. But I like the way the secondary, as far as in 2025, we could be looking at a developed Nick Cross, as your strong safety in that Cam Chancellor role. Maybe a Rodney Thomas or Julian Blackman, whichever one of those guys flourish, can kind of play the Earl Thomas role as the center field guy who roams from sideline to sideline. You got your big corner, your Richard Sherman comparison with Juju Brents. He would be a guy. And in the Seattle, the Legion of Boom, the other cornerback was kind of just, whoever. It was Byron Maxwell, and then it was Brandon Browner. Like that was the position they couldn't afford to really spend on, and they just kind of had guys just rotating, and it was a very, very good secondary, man. Indy shaping up nice in the secondary. This is a youth movement for sure, and I'm really want to see how they develop at that level.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see. Like I said earlier, they really loved how the corner position fell to them in the draft.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's not often you have a guy that you take in the fifth round than Darius Rush. That
Mm-hmm.
I personally think he has a better chance of starting as a rookie
Yeah.
than he does of not making the roster. Like that's crazy. Like that's not a
Mm-hmm.
statement that usually comes, and that's not a thing that you can say for most of the league. But that's how it fell with the Colts, and that's how they how much they like him. And even going to that Legion of Boom thing, I mean, Julius Brents has gotten a lot of those. Richard Sherman, um, Richard Sherman,
Comps.
yeah, man, I just
Mm.
could not think of the word.
I got you.
Comparisons.
Mm-hmm.
But Darius Rush is a converted receiver. Richard Sherman was a converted receiver, obviously. So having that ball skills element to Darius Rush there on the other side of Julius Brents, who is currently still rehabbing a wrist injury. So, I mean, Darius Rush is going to have every opportunity to make those snaps worth it when these OTAs start, when everything gets going. Like, I am pumped for this. And I want to keep mentioning Jalen Jones because even though he was a seventh rounder, like,
Mm-hmm.
he played in the SEC and was beyond impactful.
Yeah. I want to. I'm gonna be the first. I'm gonna say this first here. Um, I'm not brave enough to take this to Twitter yet. I'm gonna take it one day, but I'm gonna say it here first. I think Darius Rush is going to be better than Juju Brents. I think it's going. I think it's going to be better for the Indianapolis Colts than Juju Brents.
So
Please don't kill me, you guys.
this might get clipped, but I mean, but I think it too. Like, but I like both. Like they were both very close to me. Like I had Julius Brents
Me too.
as
Me
my
too.
corner 6 and Darius Rush was
Hmm.
my corner 8. Like they were that close. And the guy that
Hmm.
was in between was Clark Phillips, who isn't exactly the same
Swiss
body
Army
type as
knife,
those
slot
guys.
slot cornerback. I love
So
Clark Phillips' game, by the way.
on outside corners, they were neck and neck for me in comparisons. But I think there's just an element to Darius Rush with his speed, with his ball skills that may help him translate to the next level quicker than Julius Brents. And I'm pumped for Julius Brents. I think the size, I think his ability and press is going to be nice at the beginning of this level. So I think there's a very solid potential that that's just a really solid 1-2 connection for the
Yeah,
future. But I'd be lying if I said I'm not more excited for Darius Rush.
yeah. I said it, and I just don't. I hope it don't get clipped because that's all people are gonna hear, and they're gonna think that I don't think Juju Brents is gonna be a good player, and I think he's gonna be a damn good
It's just
player.
it's the opposite. It's just people look at those statements and they think, "Oh, because he's lifting this guy up, he hates this guy." But no, it's
Right.
honestly just how much you view this. Like it's just the
Yeah.
upside that we see with Darius Rush. It has
Hmm.
nothing to do with saying we think Julius Brents is a bust. It's just we think that Darius Rush offers more upside, so that's the guy we're more excited for.
Yeah, and I think the Colts are going to work to get Isaiah Rodgers some snaps in the slot just for future purposes. Because regardless of the Kenny Moore rehabilitation program that's been going on this offseason, I just don't see him coming back after he plays this last year off on his contract. So I think they want to get Isaiah Rodgers some snaps in the slot. We've seen Julian Blackman get some snaps in the slot, and it's a possibility that a couple games this year we can see Juju Brents and Darius Rush both starting as outside quarterbacks this season. That is not far off at all. When you look at the Colts rolled out Brandon Faison, like for multiple games last year as a starting cornerback. And these two guys are guys that fit exactly what Gus Bradley wants at cornerback. So, it's definitely a possibility. I'm excited that the Colts finally have some youth and, actually took guys early in the draft, guys that can really play, not project guys, but guys that can contribute right away. My biggest concern for Juju is his long speed, but 4.53 is not a slow guy. It's just with his size, that's decent speed, and I think he'll adjust fine. But I know that in some situations when it's time for him to flip his hips and run, he can get a little handsy because he's not that fast of a guy. I don't have that concern with Darius Rush because the athleticism just speaks for itself and the speed is there. So I'm interested to see it, man. I don't know who's up next, Destin, with the questions, but
So
that
we got a
was a
question.
that
So
was a good question
we got a question from B Rod the Coconut Jones. Obviously, we've rated that at in the past. So the
for
first part of
sure.
this question we've already answered, but we're going to go into the next.
Hmm.
Two questions: Are we still kicking the tires on any free agent interior offensive lineman? We just talked about that. And
Hmm.
what is one thing you hope to see the Colts do Week 1 versus the Jags? Thanks guys for the tremendous work this draft cycle, and looking forward to great things from both of you this year.
Okay, I'm gonna shout out one of our colleagues, Zach Hicks. If y'all don't know, Zach Hicks right now is running a series called the Empty Theory, where he's talking about different plays that you can run out of empty, and that's something that I actually am excited about. As far as why you run empty, it just makes the game easier for the quarterback to diagnose. It's only so many ways a defense can disguise things when they're guarding people that's in empty personnel, and it's fairly basic. It's an easy read. It makes the game simple. I would like to see some of those empty personnels with Anthony Richardson starting at quarterback because now you can dictate how you want to play to the defense. You're not letting the defense disguise, show you different things, and confusing him in his first start. You want to keep the game as basic as possible. I think empty allows you to do that as far as whether it's quarterback draws or quarterback power, or you throwing quick game. It's really, are you throwing bubble screens? You're making the game easier for Anthony Richardson. So that's something I would like to see week one. I also want to see them run the ball, of course. That goes without saying. I think the Colts will be able to do that because I think this offensive line that took a step back last year, I think this scheme for them is more conducive to their skill set. I think this is actually a lot better for what type of offensive linemen you have. You have athletic guys. You have guys that can move. This scheme is going to allow them to do that and play for their strengths and allow them to get out in space and put a hat on guys. That's what offensive linemen love to do. They love to get out in space where they have one-on-one opportunities to block some of these guys at the second level. And we'll see Indianapolis Colts get back to and that's what I'm excited for.
So one thing I'm hoping to see week one for the Colts, and this is just for the, I want this to be just their mindset for the season, and I think it's going to be. I want to hit the ground running with this offense, where I don't want a quarter of the playbook to be available as we're trying to like groom Anthony Richardson along. Like to me, I think the best way that you're going to be able to get this guy to reach his potential at the quickest rate is let him go out and play the position. Let him go out and be himself. Let him go out and learn through mistakes. I don't care if he throws interceptions. I don't care if he has games where he has a 40% completion rating at the end of the game. Like to me, those things happening early are only going to make him better in the long run. So I just want the mindset of this team is that the 2023 year is all about preparing the team for 2024, 2025, preparing for those seasons to be as successful as possible. So that's what I'm excited about. And I think that is what their mindset is. I mean, I know up
Mm-hmm.
to the draft, all the national media guys that you were hearing were saying that the Colts felt pressure for 2023 to be a success and yada, yada, yada. But Jim Irsay gave Shane Steichen an unprecedented 6-year contract as a first-time head coach. This was never about 2023 being the year that,
Yeah.
that things had to click. Obviously, you want the arrow to be pointing up, like always, but to me, just hit the road running, open the playbook up and press play and don't press pause. Just keep it running. Don't throw it in reverse, Terry. I want to stay forward the entire season and let's just get through the bumps. There's gonna be some, so I also want people to understand that. But I am pumped for Anthony Richardson. I think Anthony Richardson is going to be successful at the next level. And but I do think people need to realize that the way that he's going to get successful is he's going to have bumps in the road. Remember Peyton Manning's rookie year. Not everyone's Andrew Luck year one. That's all I'm trying to say.
NFL record for interceptions for a rookie. 27, 28, I believe. It was one of
I
the two.
but maybe I'm just like old school in this, but like I don't even care. Like if Anthony Richardson went out and broke that interception record, like I wouldn't even be like, do I want that to happen? Of course not. That's not what I'm saying. But but like
No, I know what you're saying.
I'm
Like,
just the type of person that interceptions aren't all made equal, is all I'll say. Like
yeah.
interceptions on like a little 3 yard out route is one thing, but going deep, opening the playbook, and just mistakes happen as you're trying to learn on the fly in the NFL, like those type of things I can live with, especially in 2023. I want to see them in 2023, so I don't see them in 2025.
Yeah, Patrick said Richardson won't pass it enough to break that INT record. I agree. He won't come out and throw the ball a thousand times a game. What I just want to see is an efficient run game and an offense that's trying to push the ball down the field off of that efficient run game that the defense is committing to stop. Simple. Simple. You load up the box, you take your shots downfield. Light boxes, you run the ball. Simple as that. Football 101. I just want to see it. I just want to see creative ways to do it. That's all I want to see. And if they're doing that, if they go 2-15, yeah, it's 15 now. 2-15, I'm fine with that. You know, you draft Marvin Harrison Jr. and you go next year, and we keep that as simple as possible. Next question.
At Feet for Fish. I'm not sure if we ever rated this at before, but
I
could
don't
we
believe
see
we
a
have.
package where Buck goes to edge, Adabore comes in, so maybe like Buck, Dio, Addy, and Pay.
Oh,
I'm assuming
Adabari. Oh, okay.
Adabore, Adabore.
Attaboy.
I've been practicing his first name a lot to the point that I've really not practice the last name much. 80
Atabore.
Adabore.
Yeah, there you go. So, I mean, listen, you may see it. I don't think it'll be anything that they hang their hat on. Nothing that they run consistently. You don't want in pass rush situations. You don't want Buck on the edge. He generates so much pressure from the interior in those pass rush situations. It just allows him to use his length better. He's not really a speed guy, so he's not going to, bend. He doesn't have much bend as a player. You want that pressure up the middle in the quarterback's face. So you typically would like to leave him there. As far as the out of way, I don't see him really contributing a ton, in his rookie season. I think he's more of a long term project type of guy. I do think he's a very talented guy and he's very strong, but I think he has to get a bit stronger. He's a bit tweener with his size, and playing the three technique is going to be tough for him. But I think leaving Pay and Dio on the edge is pretty good. But when you move Pay, not Pay, I'm sorry, I'm blanking. When you move Dio to the inside, Dio, who's admitted today he's added 11 pounds, so he's
Of
got
muscle. He said 11 pounds of muscle.
yeah, that's you know whew. So you move him to the inside along with Buckner, and I think you want Samson Ebicom, and that's a guy that's going to be your speed guy. It's going to be a guy that has some bend to his game, and he looks like he shot out of a cannon, on some of those snaps and some of those pass rush situations. I don't believe you should have all power guys out there, and Quiddy Pay is not much of a speed guy right now. But I think if you have a guy like Samson, a counter Quiddy, that can be a dangerous group of four with Buck, Dio, Quiddy, and Samson.
Yeah, I mean, as long as you're moving forward in the pass rush department, I'm going to be happy. We haven't seen an elite pass rush in Indianapolis since the Robert Mathis days. Um, on this specific one, I think there's probably specific packages we could throw Buck on the outside and it work. I mean, he has the athleticism and the size at times, but he's a true difference maker in the inside. So that's where you're going to see him most of the time. And I think during that third down obvious pass situations, similar to what Shaad said. I think it'll be Mbakum. We'd have Quiddy, we'll have Dio, we'll have Buck in the inside. And I think 8080 will have a chance to play early. It'll just depend on, but I think that role that he's going to fill is going to be more of when Buckner needs that rest. We see him get to come in that role. He is going to be adjusting to that three tech position, is what they vision him at right now. When you enter training camp, you'll get a bigger outlook of what those guys are. But right now, that's what I think they're at.
Yeah. So, moving on. Our next question is from Dr. P. His at name is at the Greekster. I believe we rated this at name before. It says projecting wins, losses yet, or is it too soon? Thank you both.
I have never. I don't know if we have rated that at name. At least I haven't.
Really, the Greekster? I felt like he's asked us questions before.
I like that name. I just don't think I've ever rated it.
What you get? Well, what you give it then? Now's a
I mean,
good time to do it. Let's do it.
I would go 7.5 on that. Like that,
Oh,
that's a solid name, the Greekster. I kind of like that it's like the Greek Ster. So I mean, it's not like spelled correctly. Like Greekster is not a
I
word,
get what you're
but like
saying.
I don't know. I like the like flow of it. The only thing and why it's not an
It's
8.
aesthetically pleasing. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, the only thing and it would be an 8 if it was for this. And this is something you can fix, Dr. P, because this is not something that has to do with your ad. I don't like that he formatted it in all caps. Like to me, it should be the in undercase, and the G can be uppercase if Greekster. That's what I would do, and it would look a little better. But that's up to you. But I'm gonna stick with a 7.5.
I'm not mad at that. I give it a 7. It looks good. The Greekster is pretty cool. I'm not as high on it as you, but I still think it's dope though. So you would give it an 8 if it was formatted the way you like it.
Yeah, I mean, but that's up to him. It's his.
Okay. I know we have all summer to do this. So do you want to project wins and losses?
Uh,
I know. I know.
I
I'm looking.
mean,
I
this is
have the
gonna change a
schedule.
lot.
I'm looking.
This is gonna change a lot for me, but right now, I put us. I'm gonna say 6 wins.
I think I have us as 5, but that's without me going up and down the schedule, looking at each game.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm just going off gut feeling right now. Like, that 5 to 7 range seems pretty realistic. And I
Yeah,
don't think that's a bad thing. I mean, like I said, this year is building on 24 and 25 for me. So I think 6 wins year one in the Anthony Richardson area, that'd be pretty.
I think my mic is going out. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think 5 to 7, somewhere in that range. They won 4 last year, but it was an absolute worst case scenario. Like the team was just awful. It changed coaches. It just was a nightmare of a season, and they won 4 games. So I think they can win 6 to 7 games. Just depends on when they turn to Anthony Richardson, how well he adjusts to the NFL. And the only reason I'm giving them 6 to 7 games is because they play in a god awful division. Those guys will be trying to get new guys acclimated as well. Jacksonville, I'm pretty sure they're the class of the division, and we get to see them early and get that figured out. But the Colts have a very light schedule, so I think 6 or 7 games is reasonable, even with a rookie quarterback.
I love the 4 and 13 or 13 and 4 comment here. This is hilarious.
It can be either one.
Yeah, just had to throw it up. But
No in
so
betweens.
so going here to Brad Clemens. This is a pretty straight to the point one. Do we see an AR contract signing soon?
I'm gonna go out on a limb with this one and say yes. I think it's pretty much a formality. How much money he's gonna make. Each draft pick has a certain amount of money allocated to that slot. It's just a matter of them hammering out minor details of it. It'll get done. The Colts have a lot of guys to sign. A lot of draft picks to sign. Trust me, it'll get done.
Yeah, I mean they just got back on Monday from that week hiatus that they had to be away from the building, and
Hmm.
they've been focusing on other things. You hardly ever see rookie contract holdouts anymore. I mean, was the last one Joey Bosa?
It might be.
Like it's been a minute since we've had that go up, and I don't know if this was a question that we had for later, but I know it was one that I saw asked in the comments at one point. Was like there a deadline for where you have to sign the rookie by? I believe when Joey Bosa's happened, like he didn't sign until training camp was underway. But
Yeah.
you can, I know you would not be able to participate in training camp activities without the contract signed.
Yeah. So what we got next? Oh, we just got a super chat.
So
So
we got a super chat here from Drake Wally, colleague here at Horseshoe Huddle. Make sure you guys are checking out his work
shout
with
out Drake.
Andrew, and make sure you guys are checking out his articles when they're posted on the Horseshoe Huddle website. But you guys think Houston, Jacksonville, or Tennessee could be swept in 2 games by the Colts? I mean, Houston's the best chance, but I
Hmm.
mean, they're in a very similar. Like, I don't know if this is the. I think if I think the Colts have a better chance of being swept this year than sweeping an AFC South opponent.
Which is funny because man, they're not good teams. Houston and Tennessee, it's not good
Oh,
teams. I mean, Tennessee's
have you gone through Tennessee's roster? Like it's
offensively they're awful, like god awful.
like
But
32nd in the league when it comes to just personnel. I mean,
yeah,
who's the most notable offensive lineman on the Titans right now? They let them all go.
Dylan Radins.
I mean, they signed Andre Dillard from the Eagles. Like, is that the biggest name on the offensive line right now?
Uh, Andre Dillard, who didn't work out for the Eagles, ended up getting his job took by Jordan Mailata. And
A rugby player.
when
Now,
Jordan get drafted in the 7th round?
roughly, I mean, he, but who?
Dylan
Hey, the
Radins,
boy can sing
probably.
though. The boy can sing though.
I shouldn't be saying anything negative about Dylan Radins.
Yeah,
After his sister yelled at me a
yeah.
couple
So
of draft cycles ago.
I would say that was a whole drama about it. But yeah, I mean that Tennessee team, it Vrabel is a heck of a coach. So that they have that going for them.
And the
But I
defense is pretty good. The
oh
defense
yeah,
is pretty solid.
definitely
Yeah,
has talent. The
yeah,
secondary still has a lot of questions.
yeah.
But I mean, Jeffrey Simmons is a dog. Harold Landry, if he comes back healthy, a dog.
Dog. Yeah.
I that second pass rusher is a little bit of a question. I know Bud Dupree is no longer there. That contract ended up being a little bit of a
Our old
failure
friend
for
Danico
Tennessee.
Autry.
Danico Autry on the inside, opposite of Jeffrey Simmons, also goes swings out to the outside here and there. Um, yeah, that Tennessee team that does not scare me. But Mike Vrabel knows a thing or two. So I wouldn't write us down to be sweeping anybody this year, but would love to see it, and I would love for it to be Tennessee because can't stand them.
I know, right? So yeah, hopefully we pull out. Hopefully we get a chance to sweep one of those guys at least. Maybe it's Houston. Houston is another team that's they added a lot of free agents, but I'm not sure how any of that is going to fit together. It, I don't know, man. This division has a chance to be really awful, like really bad.
Hey, the NFC South, the AFC South, and the NFC South are going to be interesting this year.
Okay, we got one more question on our list. And we kind of touched on a lot of these things, and maybe you could just, add something to it. But it's from Poppy19 at Dito Richards. We definitely rated this at name before. He said, "What our team needs post draft free agency? Any players out there you would like to see the Colts sign? Give me Fabian Morrow as a cheap vet presence and Anthony Barr. I don't think Leonard comes back as himself, if at all. Offensive line, running back, wide receiver could also use some help."
Yeah, so in no order, my needs for the Colts post draft, um, right guard. I'm gonna say will linebacker slash linebacker with coverage ability in general is something that I would look at pretty heavily if I was the Colts right now. Do I want to say anything else? I think those two are my main ones. I mean, roster figuration wise, I mean, we're gonna have to see some
Yeah.
of these young guys play, and the corner room is definitely still a question mark. But I'm pretty much at the point with how the board fell, to where I want to see these guys play. Um, so I say roll with the young guys at corner, and I know that's dangerous, a little bit risky, but I like the guys they got.
Yeah, and that was my biggest thing, with the cornerback situation. I mean, right, interior offensive line goes without saying. I definitely would like to add an interior offensive lineman. But cornerback, Akello Weatherspoon, who was waived today by Pittsburgh, I believe, is a guy that fits Gus Bradley's archetype. And he's a guy I do have interest in if I was really trying to compete, but I would much rather give those reps to one of the rookies that we drafted. And that's going to be my answer for a lot of this stuff. This season is not a season where I'm trying to compete or make a playoff push. So I would much rather give valuable snaps to rookies and young guys that we can develop or that's going to be here past this season. I just have more interest in that than signing a 1 year stopgap veteran to come in and help us. Like I have really no interest in that at this point. Like I'm all for the youth movement. I'm embracing it. I think it's gonna be fun as a fan to watch these guys grow, and you rarely get these opportunities to see a team embrace the youth movement and grow together. I know we have some veterans that's looking to win now, but unfortunately, our the way we played our hand at quarterback the past couple of years has forced us into this position, and now we just have to kind of embrace it. So that's what I want to see. I want to see the young guys play. So these holes that we have, I'm fine with. If it's a young guy that's waiting at that spot that can possibly get those reps over a veteran guy.
Yeah, the two spots I said, right guard. There's two names on the market that I think if they wanted to go the vet route because they hit camp and they don't think these guys are ready to start
Mhm.
right now. And if you're going to put Anthony Richardson out there day one, which I'm pretty outspokenly that you should just let him play. Make sure you have trustworthy guys on the line. Dalton Risner at 27, known starter, has experience there from Denver. I'd be down for him to be the guy that was brought in. And at 27, you kind of are able to use him longer as well.
Mhm.
And if they wanted to get a vet that's a little bit more on the end of his career, a guy who has Indiana ties, even went to Notre Dame, Roger Saffold, former Titan, was with
Mhm.
the Bills this past year, had also been other places as well. But he's another guy that I think is on the market that could come in and be an impactful player. And at interior linebacker, at that will linebacker spot, two guys that I think have coverage ability that I think could play day one for the Colts that are available. One is probably a pipe dream, but Deion Jones. I would love Deion Jones in that will linebacker spot here.
I bet you
And
would.
I would. I would. Now, a little bit of a cheaper realm guy that I think has kind of bounced around a little bit, has some injury concerns, but when he's on the field, coverage ability is a strength for him, is Miles Jack. Former
Oh yeah.
Jacksonville Jaguar, was with Pittsburgh this past year, is now a
Mhm.
free agent. I think he could add an element there. I know the Colts like EJ Speed. I know they like JoJo Doman, but I do think there's an element there where there's not a proven coverage linebacker in this room right now. And with Shaquille Leonard, we don't know if he's going to be ready for day one. I just think you need to add in that coverage world because they like EJ Speed, they like JoJo Doman, but those guys may have to play the mic. A little bit if Shaquille's not ready to go week one, so that will spot I think you need to go out and add somebody there. And Deion Jones and Miles Jack are two names that I like.
You know what would have been perfect? Sterling Weatherford. I would never
Rest
forgive Matt. I would never forgive Matt Eberflus for signing him away from us.
Hey, they're going to be at Colts training camp. So that means Sterling Weatherford is going to be back on the Colts training camp field during preseason.
Joint practices, right? It should be
Yep, joint
joint practice in
practices
the.
week 2 of the preseason. The only home preseason game the Colts have this year.
Oh, and shout out to Matt Ryan for joining CBS and
For
getting the
getting
bag
his bag.
and not retiring. Wink,
Hey,
wink.
hey, hey. We've said it multiple times. I think there are some fans that are mad at him for it, but I wouldn't have done it differently. Like, are you kidding me?
No, man.
He's
No.
getting he's getting 12 extra million dollars on top of whatever he's getting paid from CBS this next year just to not fill in his paperwork yet.
Okay.
I think it'll be all right.
I'm gonna go cry. I'm gonna go cry now. I'm gonna wrap this show up. And I'm gonna go cry in the car. Thank y'all, man, for tuning into another episode of the Saddle Up Show with Shaad and Destin. Destin, do you have anything before we get out?
Nope, just buckle in, everybody. I know this is the slow part of the off season, but we're going to try to keep it as entertaining as possible with more content coming at the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel. If you guys are just trying to catch up and learn about some of these new draft picks, undrafted free agents, make sure you're checking out the Horseshoe Huddle channel with so many different interviews. An interview that was posted today by our colleague Zach Hicks on the Horseshoe Huddle channel with Zaire Franklin was posted at 6 p.m. today. So after this episode ends, make sure you guys go check that out, along with any of the interviews that we've done over the past month or so. And make sure you're always checking out horseshoehuddle.com for everything Colts via the article scene.
Yeah, man. What else did I have anything? No, I don't think I have anything. All right, y'all. We appreciate y'all for checking in. We'll see y'all next week. Peace.